Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 195, the hot, humid August edition. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today's August 14th, 2015.
All right, welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. George and I want to apologize up front. We know we haven't recorded much this last month at all. We recorded very little in July because we're lazy, and we just got back from General Convention, and it was a crazy time. And this last couple weeks have been very chaotic for both George and I. As we've both mentioned, I'm moving Monday at 11 a.m. I sign away this house to a new owner, and we pray that they have as much fun in this house as we've had. And George has some family issues that he's been dealing with mom and dad who moved into Florida across the street. It's kind of an Everybody Loves Raymond situation, but it's getting more and more critical. I just noticed... one of the things we have here is we're running out of cups at the house. And so I asked my daughter to bring me a cup of Diet Pepsi, and she brought me the Santa Claus missing the handle. So everything's packed into boxes except the stuff.
I thought you stuck your pencils in that on the counter.
No. We're going to throw this out as we move out. So everything else is in boxes. So George, what's going on with Mom?
Well, we think she is dying. We've had an up and down month. She's had 5 trips to the emergency room and admissions to intensive care for massive internal bleeding. And the doctors initially diagnosed liver cancer. But they were unable to do a biopsy because her platelet level was so low that any procedure would cause her to bleed to death. Well, she finally got her platelets up above 50, and they did the biopsy, and she doesn't have liver cancer.
Good news.
Wonderful news. Yeah. But what's the problem? And the doctor said it could be lupus, it could be a number of things, but it's causing her, whenever she rises from a chair, her blood pressure falls 30 points. And they've been able to test this. And she has tendency for massive internal bleeding if she bruises herself. And every time she's gone to the emergency room, it's because she's gotten up and passed out and fallen and hit her head or something of this nature. And this morning, she was to go in for about 8 hours of surgery and with the orthopedics because they think there's some underlying cervical problems, cervical spinal neck problems. Mm-hmm. And as she was being prepped for surgery, the hematologist said, no, her platelets are too low, you can't do the surgery today. And today, she's going to go to the hematologist's office and sort of figure out, okay, she needs to have 3 or 4 surgeries, different parts of her body, to basically keep going forward. And she's a terrible patient. And it's taken 5 admissions to the emergency room to finally agree to allow her to have the doctors surgically treat the issues that she's facing. One problem she has is her spleen is attacking her liver. And they thought at first it was cancer, but now they think, well, could it be lupus? Could it be some autoimmune disease? We don't know. And it's been a very trying time because, they can't live by themselves anymore. We can't afford for them to have a live-in housekeeper. We're not able to pay for them to move to an assisted living facility. It's a little late to get extended care insurance, so they may have to move in with us.
Wow.
And so Susan, my wife, has been a real trooper. She's been spending several hours a day taking care of my father, for instance, while my mother's in the hospital. And while I'm off doing my little work.
So, in other words, please keep us in prayer. If you want to see our mugs on camera more than you do now, we need prayer. We need intensive prayer for George and his family. We need prayer that my wife and I don't it would just be murder. It wouldn't be murder suicide, with the stress of moving. And it's what we go through. We're middle-aged men with aging parents and relocation issues. So do keep us in your prayers, George.
Well, actually, Kevin, one of the things I've meant to talk to you about this. I want to put an ad up in Anglican Ink. I need to start selling my liturgy books.
Ooh.
I'm going to start getting rid of my library because I need to generate cash.
Yeah, right behind the screen, behind George. If he pulls that down, you're going to see there's a library of all his books, but not all of his books. Where are your books kept?
Well, I've got about 15,000 books, and I have a commercial warehouse. It's not a storage unit. It's a commercial warehouse for my libraries. And I'm starting with my least favorite topic, liturgy. I have, if you want a Church of Nigeria prayer book, if you want a Church of the Province of West Indies prayer book, if you want, the 1898 Book of Common Prayer, Zebra edition, I've got it. A misspent youth collecting and buying up old theological libraries, and I'm going to start having to liquidate this stuff because, A, my kids don't want it. The girls just don't seem to be interested, and I can't keep lugging it around, and I'm gonna need the cash. The doctors, my mother has this prescription. It's one pill. It's $1,000, and I said, it's not like twice a day, is it?
That's right. Jeez.
No, but it's experimental, and so Blue Cross Blue Shield won't pay for it until she's an extremist, and at that point, what's the point? No. What's the use? So.
It's time. Okay, so
first folio Shakespeare, that's out the door.
So I'm putting George's email right here on the script. If you want to email him and buy some books, and maybe we'll try and set up something in the future. But your competition that's Amazon. They're driving everybody out of business with book sales. We need to move on to the news here at some point. We're now 6 minutes in the show, and we haven't talked anything about Bruno, the Pope, all the things going on.
Pope
Bruno. Ooh, wow. Hey, no. Pope Francis is going to Cuba, was the news last week. And George and I actually recorded an episode last week that you never got to see. You never got to see it because I had installed an upgrade for our live streaming software here. And I was not able to watch George, who his biggest tendency is to slouch a little during the show. And if you watch closely, I can move him left or right when he slouches, and so that you never really get to see it. I'll just see him kind of get relaxed, and what I do, I just slide this little slider here, and George is always in the center of the screen. I didn't get to do that last week when we recorded, and so you see basically half of George because I wasn't paying attention to the monitor. My apologies. So we're going to cover a little bit of last week's news. Pope Francis, who's come out as a socialist / communist in his economic social policies, not a surprise because that's the way he was raised, is going to do a Eucharist with a picture of a very violent person, George.
Ernesto Che Guevara will be the icon in back of the papal altar at the Mass in the Plaza de la Revolucion in Habana next month. And Francis is wonderful with symbolism. He's wonderful for symbolism. He does things and says things, but they don't necessarily connect with what actually happens. So Francis has, had wonderful imagery of reaching out to the left and perhaps softening the church's line on divorce and remarried Catholics receiving Holy Communion, of titillating college freshmen so they can have a poster of the Pope in front of Che Guevara's thing. But will Francis actually do anything other than make a photo opportunity? That's something he's not done. He's a good enough Jesuit to be able to go both ways.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the person we're talking about was a revolutionary who helped the Castro regime gain control of Cuba, have the Great Revolution, kill hundreds of thousands of liquidate hundreds of thousands of people, including homosexuals, including Catholics, educational people, people who wore glasses. people who dare to stand up and protest. And so it's odd for me as an Anglican Christian to watch this person of violence celebrated during the Eucharist.
Well, you can't blame Francis. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, you can blame Francis.
Of course you can.
You can't blame Francis for the architecture of communist Havana. No. But at the same time, they could have put up like a white screen or something. Last month, the Pope went to Bolivia, and the president of Bolivia, Evo Morales, gave him a crucifix that was a cross between a hammer and a sickle with Jesus Christ on it.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's wonderful, wonderful photographs of the Pope holding this crucifix with a hammer going up and the sickle being the crossbar with Christ lying on that. And he sort of was looking at it like it was a tie given to him by a nephew that he really is not ever going to wear again. But the photos and the imagery are going around the world and sort of enlivening a certain segment of the Catholic progressive movement, that here's somebody who really gets it. But what you don't know is then after the photo shoot was over, the Pope handed it back, thank you very much, yep, and goes on. So who is the true Francis? I don't really know. I don't know if anybody knows. Not lots, but there are people who claim to have the inside scoop. You know, remember when the first election came around, Greg Venables, friend of this show, wonderful man, said that Pope Jorge Bergoglio is a friend of his, sure, and vouches for this man's Christian belief and faith. And that's a wonderful thing, but I've got Greg Venables saying this, and then I got the Pope with a hammer and a sickle crucifix, and Che Guevara, and this sort of Peronista social economic vision. Where's the real Pope?
Well, I think one of the things was he was raised to hate capitalism. When you're raised in Argentina, Brazil, in South America, in socialist countries and communist countries, you are taught that you are poor because of the great white Satan America. And
Norte-Americanos.
You know, those capitalists are taking away all of our money, and they're the reason we're poor. They're the reason we have to eat dirt. And so it's really part of what they've been taught for many, many years, and it's ingrained in the culture. It's like every time the electricity goes off in a town in North Korea, they blame the Americans. Clearly, we have nothing to do with that. We aren't that sophisticated yet, but it's the blame game, and he was taught to blame capitalism, and we're seeing it now more and more in his teachings as he travels around and gives speeches about economic policies, and now climate change.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Anglican news. We have a bishop here in America who got...
No, we have a pope in Los Angeles. He's acting.
Pope Bruno. Sorry, infallible. Pope Bruno had charges brought up against him that were filed with 815, and let's give a little bit of details. They said he was conduct unbecoming a bishop or clergy. What does that mean, George?
Well, he was accused of fraud, lying, corruption, not living up to his ordination vows, basically being an all-around scoundrel. And the charges were presented by the parishioners of St. James the Great in Newport Beach, Rhode Island, for the way he's handled the liquidation of the parish, selling it to a real estate developer for half its market value. The broker having to be a buddy or, quote, a good Episcopalian. Mm-hmm. I'd love to be a good Episcopalian and pocket $15 million just for that honor. Well, the National Church panel of reference first accepted the charges, mm-hmm, which was strike one against Bruno. It wasn't just dismissed out of hand. And then on I believe it was last Friday, the National Church's panel of reference reported back that they recommended conciliation between Bishop Bruno and the parish.
Well, help me out with a definition of conciliation. I know reconciliation. I know repentance. I know jail time. I know lots of different things. What's conciliation?
A real swift kick in the you-know-whats to John Bruno.
Yeah.
Well, Bruno is accused of committing bad acts, and conciliation is the person who has committed the bad acts to say he's sorry and try to make amends and not do it again. Mm-hmm. So what the panel of references done is, now some people wanted John Bruno, to be publicly humiliated and have bad things said about him. That's our job, folks, not the National Church.
Don't expect 815 to do that, no.
But what they have done is said to John Bruno, look, you need to make this right, which means you can't sell this church property. You've got to stop your lawsuits, threats against the parishioners. This is, as in the Episcopal world, this is a real slap in the face to John Bruno. And if he doesn't go through with this, they can proceed to DEFCON 2, which is Charles Benison territory of ecclesiastical trials. And
well, just, you know, we need to look at the reality. He did nothing different than the current presiding bishop. As far as using legal tactics to take churches and property by all means necessary. And I see a little bit of hypocrisy here, George.
Yes and no. Yes and no. There are no politics involved in this whatsoever. In other words, this is Bishop Bruno attacking the liberal remnant of a congregation that started over again.
When you say politics, you mean theology.
Theological politics. Right, yeah. This, in other words, there's no left, right, women conservative, women's conservative, homosexual. Right. None of those issues are there. He's just a bad apple.
Looking for money.
Looking for money to finance some of his real estate deals or speculation. Mm-hmm. And the Catherine Jefferts Schori fights were all political. Mm-hmm. And so there is, and in fact, the abandonment of the communion of the Episcopal Church was how all these other people, Jack Eicher, Bishop Lawrence, and so on and so forth, were deposed. This is Bishop Bruno is being treated like Heather Cook or Charles Benison. Mm-hmm. Benison was under the old Title IV canon, but where basically moral turpitude is the issue. And what the panel of references has said, and this is George's interpretation, is that, John Bruno, you're a scoundrel, but you're not a big enough scoundrel for us to publicly humiliate you. But make this go away, and here's how you do it.
Now, what if he doesn't happen? We go to DEFCON 2. How many DEFCONs do we have in 815 now?
Well, the panel of reference could have made one of three choices. They could have said, we see nothing here. We want conciliation where the person who's done bad things repents and makes it right. Mm-hmm. Or we want a full-fledged investigation and check the, subpoena the bank records and things like that. If John Bruno or the parish, either one can be at fault. If the parish refuses to participate or whatnot, it too can trigger something. If this does not work, it goes back to the panel of reference. And the panel of reference can either dismiss it, which is most unlikely, send it into investigation, but I don't think they'll do that. Or they will ask the presiding bishop to make a summary ruling, if you will, have some sort of pastoral admonition. And
I think the presiding bishop would send him a certificate of award. Do I have that wrong?
Well, it depends what you think of Catherine Jefferts Schori. Would she be like Bill Clinton and Mark Rich? In other words, here, the last few weeks of my presidency as presiding bishop or president of the United States, I'm going to pardon felons who have contributed mightily to my wife's campaign contributions. Now, is she going to make a parting gift to John Bruno? Is she going to make a parting gift to the Episcopal Church? If it gets to her. And part of the art in all this for Catherine Jefferts Schori is to make sure it doesn't get to her. It gets handed. If it does come back, it goes to Michael Curry.
Well, both are trying to time out because Bruno's retiring and Catherine Jefferts Schori's done in November. When is she?
Well, Michael Curry is installed, I believe, the 1st of November at Washington National Cathedral. I think that's when he formally steps into office. So her job is to have this clock run out, so she doesn't have to deal with it, because this is a mess.
No, it is.
I mean, I think everybody knows where the truth lies in this situation. John Bruno's been caught out.
Okay, we're up.
Now, but here's the difference. No one has yet been able to prove that he has done anything to personally feather his own nest.
No.
He's not a crook. He's just a bully.
Okay. Well, George, we're up to 19 minutes and 37 seconds. We're timing it out as well. We like to keep the shows under 20 minutes. Look for our next episode. If you do want to get a book from George, his email address is right here, geoconger@gmail.com. If you want to make a donation, click on this link, anglicaninc.com/donate. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and you've been watching episode 195 of Anglican Unscripted.
Now, let me tell you something. We're moving to the big time city. We're going down to Milford. And yesterday I walked into the Milford post office to rent a post office box. And to me, that's like going to the DMV. Because you got to deal with government employees or pseudo-government employees who don't want you there anyway. Here at the Thomaston Post Office, at 5 o'clock, you see all the small business guys closing the door, running to the post office, because at 5:01, the guy closes the door and you can't get in. It's hilarious. You know, Bob from Red's Hardware is running down to the post office to get in before they lock the door. You know, there's no customer service up here in Thomaston whatsoever. I remember when I went in to fill out the application to get a post office box, I had to have mail saying that I lived at this address. I had to have my passport, my driver's license, you know, basically, you know, everything, including a card from Grandma saying she loved me.
That's almost... It's like going to the Mercedes dealership to get work done. I mean, that much
and so,
they'll ask you to do.
So I'm going down to Milford. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. So they have a brand new post office down there. Has all this drive-through stuff and all this technology. And I go in there. May I help you? Yes, I want to get a post office box. I'm just waiting. All right, come over here. It's like, well, fill out this little form here, and I'll be with you in 1 minute. As I fill out the form, and literally in 20 minutes, with just my driver's license and my passport, I had post office boxes, 2 keys. They had filled out the forwarding stuff from my home to the post office for me. They did it all online. I mean, this is the mecca of post office, and I'm like, do you guys know you work for the federal government? You don't have to treat me nice. it goes.
How much does it cost more in Milford, or is it a fixed fee across the United States?
I don't know. It's $80 a year for a post office box, and I do that for the business and for Anglican TV. And for now, we're going to have our home mail delivered there too. It's 3 blocks from the house, so it's not a big deal. And so I'm in there and I'm like, these guys don't know they work for the federal government.